President, please be seated. The court is now in session. This morning we will continue to hear the testimony of the witness So Se-keun, who will be questioned by the prosecution. And before I hand the floor to the prosecution, Judge Paris, could you please report the attendance of the parties and the individuals? Greffier, Mr. President, this morning all parties are present except the accused Ieng Sary, who is present in the holding cell downstairs as he waives his direct presence in this proceeding through his counsel. The letter of waiver has been submitted to the greffier. The greffier also observes that there is a new civil party lawyer present who has been recognized already by the bar. As for the reserve witness TCW 490, the witness has arrived at the compound and is being sworn. Thank you. The chamber will now decide on the request by Ieng Sary. The chamber indeed receives the request by Ieng Sary on the 6th of August 2012 to waive his presence directly in the proceeding in the courtroom via his counsel and instead to follow it through audio-visual means. In the holding cell downstairs, the treating doctor who treats him at the detention facility this morning and observes that Mr. Ieng Sary is fatigued, he has a backache, and he has to use the bathroom frequently, and recommends that he should follow the proceedings through audio-visual means in the holding cell downstairs. As Mr. Ieng Sary himself has these health problems and requests to waive his direct presence in the courtroom, and that he shall be allowed to follow the proceeding in the holding cell downstairs through audio-visual means, and that he is in a position to directly communicate with his defense team, the chamber thus grants the request. And he is authorized to follow it through a remote means in a holding cell downstairs. And this is for the whole day proceeding. The AV booth is instructed to link the proceeding to the holding cell downstairs for this whole day proceeding. As reported by the greffier, the chamber observes that there is a presence of the international lawyer for civil parties, Mr. Federon, German Zupa, and in order to follow the internal rule 22 of the ECCC, the chamber requests Mr. Pik Ong, the lead co-lawyer for civil parties, to request for the recognition of this lawyer, who has not yet recognized by the trial chamber. You may proceed. Pik Um, Good morning, Mr. President, Your Honors, and everyone. To my right is Mr. Federal Chairman Zepa, who is a registered counsel in France. He is French. He already sworn in before the Court of Appeal of the Kingdom of Cambodia in 2008. And he is a civil party lawyer in this court in case 002. And we therefore request for the trial chamber's recognition of this new lawyer so that he is able to defend the interests of the civil parties. Thank you. Dear President, please stand. Mr. Federal Jamin Zepa, you are hereby recognized by the trial chamber as the civil party lawyer for the purpose of the proceeding before this chamber, and pursuant to this recognition, you have the right and privileges as other civil party lawyers. You may be seated. The floor is now given to the prosecution to continue their question to this witness. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning to your honors and to the different parties and to the public, and a good morning, witness. I am therefore going to put questions to you for the total duration of today, and since our time is a little bit short to cover all the topics that we need to cover, I will ask you to please be as clear and as precise as possible in your answers to my questions. But before I turn to the core of my questioning, which revolves around the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I wish to start with a few follow-up questions in relation to what you told us last Thursday. So you said regarding the trip that Khieu Samphan and Ieng Sary undertook, and who were in China and then who traveled to Vietnam in May 1974, and you said that you were part of this trip. And you said that Khieu Samphan and Ieng Sary had traveled to the liberated zone from Vietnam. And do you know how long Ieng Sary stayed in the liberated zone during this trip? So you were in Hanoi, but they continued on to the liberated zone. So how long, or do you know how long Ieng Sary remained in the liberated zone then?
Response. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Prosecution, could you please clarify your question? To which liberated zone are you referring to? Because there were many liberated zones in Cambodia, in Vietnam, and also in Laos.
Yes, you spoke about the trip that you undertook with Khieu Samphan and Ieng Sary from China to Vietnam. And you said that you spent about a week visiting Vietnam for an official visit, and also you visited a liberated zone in Laos, and then you remained in Hanoi to work for the Voice of the Funk radio, and Ieng Sary and Khieu Samphan continued their trip to the liberated zone in Cambodia. So what I'm trying to see is how long did Ieng Sary remain in the liberated zone in Cambodia at that time, if you know?
Response, I do not know.
ខ្ញុំមិនបានដឹង
Yes, you spoke about the trip that Khieu Samphan and Ieng Sary from China to Vietnam, and you said that you spent about a week visiting Vietnam for an official visit, and also you visited a liberated zone in Laos, and then you remained in Hanoi to work for the Voice of the Funk radio, and Ieng Sary and Khieu Samphan continued their trip to the liberated zone in Cambodia. So what I'm trying to see is how long did Ieng Sary remain in the liberated zone in Cambodia at that time, if you know?
ខ្ញុំ
And the second point I wish to clarify, witness, is your return to Cambodia after having worked for the Voice of the Funk in Hanoi. Can you tell us when specifically you returned to Cambodia? Because apparently there is some of the information does not concur in the documents we have received. And you in particular spoke about April 1975 during last Thursday's hearing. So was it in April, was it before, was it after April 1975 that you returned to Cambodia?
Mr. President, can I decide not to respond to this question because it seems not relevant? The President, you are obliged to respond to this question. The question is also relevant as it relates to the history of the CPK. I said I arrived in Phnom Penh in May. That's all I can say. Because regarding the exact date of my departure was something that happened a long time ago, but at least I can say I arrived in Phnom Penh in May 1975.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, witness. So you left Hanoi before Ying Tirit returned to Cambodia?
I cannot recall it clearly. It might be possible that she had returned prior to my return.
Thank you. Now I would like to turn to the evacuation of Phnom Penh. So the evacuation had already taken place because you told us that you returned in May 1975 and then you worked at B-20. But you said to us on Thursday that, and this happened at around 15:54 in the draft transcript of last Thursday's hearing, you mentioned different reasons that were given to you to justify the evacuation of Phnom Penh. And you mentioned in particular the fear of American bombings. And then you spoke about the fear of famine. And the third reason that was given, or that you gave, was, I quote, the evacuation of Phnom Penh was to disseminate the spy networks from the enemy. End of quote. So I wish to know when you were explained these three reasons justifying the evacuation of Phnom Penh. If you remember the year, the place, and the circumstances when this was explained to you.
Regarding the three reasons for the evacuation of people from Phnom Penh were the summaries of what I was told. There was no document or no direct instructions from the leadership level as getting to the clear 1, 2, 3 points, but that was my own conclusion and a summary.
Thank you. When did they tell you about this? Were you still working at B-20 then, or were you already working at B-1?
I think my answer is already clear. I cannot recall the date or the location, because it's been so many years already. And although my memory is still working, but I cannot recall in details, I just give you my own summary of the event as I recall it.
Witness, somebody must have spoken to you about this, and who was that person? Do you remember exactly who that person was?
I just said I am the one who summarized the event based on the document on my own understanding. And of course, nobody has to tell me regarding this point. I am not a person who is blind or uneducated. I can do that. The President, Mr. Witness, you are reminded that you have been informed of your right and obligations prior to your testimony. You have the obligation to respond to the questions posed to you regarding what you have known, have remembered, and have witnessed. Or that you have observed. As a witness, you shall not provide a testimony based on your subjective conclusion. The question is clear, and if you know, you say so, based on what happened that you have known. And if you cannot recall it, please state so, and that will be it. Try to avoid a conclusion or your personal understanding of the event. Your personal conclusion can only count it if you are an expert witness based on your profession and expertise. And please try to understand the question clearly and respond within the limit of what you have been asked. And if you're asked to respond briefly, please say so. And don't make any unnecessary comment in your response. Unless the points are relevant to the question. And as you have been reminded, you will be questioned by hundreds of questions during these few days. So please try to save your energy in fulfilling your obligation as a witness before this chamber. And try to concentrate on the questions posed to you. And respond accordingly. And if your answer of the question, you may ask it to be repeated or rephrased. You can either do it directly with the people who question you or through the chamber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me try again with this question. Witness, I'm going to be quite clear. Who spoke to you about the fact that the purpose of the evacuation of Phnom Penh was to disperse the spy networks of the enemy?
Nobody told me about that. I heard it through the radio broadcast. And I thank you, Mr. President, for your reminder. I clearly know of my response, of what I have to do. And importantly, I only know that there will be hundreds of questions for me. So I will try to reserve my energy.
And according to the radio broadcast, and based on what you knew of what the party was claiming, were there many spy networks, many enemy spy networks in Phnom Penh?
I do not know, because I was an active member of the CPK then, and as you're all familiar, as a party's member, we had the clear task of knowing exactly the task that we were assigned to, and we had to accomplish it within the framework of the task assigned. Regarding that kind of enemy, it was beyond my competence, and probably other units were responsible for that kind of task.
And during the period when you were a member of the party, which was a long period, did you hear about class struggle? Did anybody talk to you about class struggle?
Regarding class struggle, I had known about class struggles before I even joined the party or became the party's member. I knew about class struggle when I read the book by Karl Marx. I knew about this subject matter since.
And according to the party, there was... were there any particular classes with which there was antagonism, clear antagonism?
Mr. President, allow the prosecutor to clarify the question. In the communist term, or in the communist movement, and it was based on the stages. During the democratic revolution, during the socialist revolutions, there were various stages regarding the conflict. So I'd like the prosecutor to clarify the question again.
Yes, I'm speaking still about the period of the evacuation of Phnom Penh. Can you tell us what the different social classes were back then? Which were the strategic classes of the CPK, first of all, and then maybe you could talk to us about the other social classes.
Let me respond. The strategic class of the communist movement was not only within the CPK. Actually, the CPK of the Khmer Rouge was a student comparable to that status of the Laos status. We were kind of a junior compared to other communist movements. So the conflicts within the party was that, which clearly showed the Workers' Party was the kind of a leading class within the movement.
Merci. Donc, thank you. So we had the working class, but were there other classes that figured within the class struggle? Which class was fighting which other class?
សូមលោក ប្រធានឲ្យលោកប្រញ្ញាបញ្ជាក់ដោយខ្ញុំបាននិយាយដំណាក់កាលនេះនិយាយជារួមអញ្ចឹងយើងពិបាកនឹងឆ្លើយឲ្យចំណាព្រោះវាដំណាក់កាលតស៊ូវាមានដំណាក់កាលរបស់វា
The President, Prosecutor, you may continue. Mr. Prosecutor, please be reminded to simplify your questions so that it is conducive to exerting answer from the witness.
Merci.
Thank you. Mr. Witness, when Phnom Penh was liberated and then evacuated, how many social classes were there in society, according to the party? And kindly specify these social classes by name.
When people were being evacuated from Phnom Penh, all people were evacuated without any exception, whether they be from proletarian class or feudalist class or whatever class, they were all evacuated.
Vous avez répondu.
Well, you've answered one of my prior questions, but you haven't answered about social classes. Now, among the people who were evacuated, were there, for example, capitalists, feudalists, landowners, bourgeois?
I have already answered to that question. I said all classes were evacuated out of Phnom Penh city.
Je vais vous montrer.
In a few seconds, I'm going to be showing you a document, Mr. Witness, but prior to that, I shall ask you one or two preliminary questions about the person who is allegedly the author of the document. Do you know Mr. Thun Prasit, and did he work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs during the Democratic Kampuchea regime?
Yes, I know Mr. Thun Prasit. He was one of my close friends, and he worked with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Est-ce que vous seriez capable de reconnaître?
Would you be able to recognize something that he had written, given that he was a close friend?
The President, could you please ask the prosecutor to ask the question, because he actually wrote in many different languages, in Khmer, French, and English. So could the prosecution be directed to put a precise question as to the language? And to my understanding, he may have asked me about his writing in Khmer. Is my understanding correct that you are talking about his writing in Khmer?
Oui, ce serait en Khmer.
Yes, in Khmer.
It depends on the document, but to the best of my knowledge, Mr. Chun Prasit more often than not wrote in English rather than Khmer.
Bon, malgré tout,
But nevertheless, I imagine that you could tell us if indications on a document by Jun Prasit are indeed his own, since you were a close friend of the man.
The President. Yes, National Council, you may proceed. Mr. Council, through the translation, it seems that the question by the prosecution elicits the conclusion from the witness, and I think that if that question is correct through that translation, I think that question is not appropriate because it will induce the witness to draw a conclusion.
Let me reformulate. As a close friend of Mr. Chun Prasit, do you think that you would be able to recognize this person's identification data on a document, by which I mean his name, his revolutionary name, the person he's married to, and so forth?
Yes, I can recognize it because I know him very well. Whether it be written in Khmer or in Latin, whether French or English, but it has been long times since then, so I need to see the document. But if I look at his writing in Khmer, I know that his handwriting is not that good. For other peoples, they might have good handwriting I can recognize, but for his case, I have to see the document.
merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to show the witness D366-7.1.831. This is a biography by Mr. Chun Prasit, or that is what it is believed anyway, on democratic Cambodia, written in 25th of December 1976. And the precise pages that we could show are right at the very start, the very first page, and then page 19 in Khmer, which has number 000-69-554. In French, it's page 13, ERN 008100048, and in English, it's page 12, 000825507. Now, with your permission, Mr. President, I would like to show the document in Khmer to the witness and also have it up on the screen.
The President, you may proceed. Court officer is now instructed to obtain the document from the prosecution and present it to the witness for his examination.
Si Monsieur le témoin.
If the witness could kindly look firstly at the first page, which shows the names, the revolutionary names, and the people marital status of the document writer, the wife's name and the children's name and so forth, and kindly tell us if we are indeed looking at something by Tun Prasit from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
The President interrupts. Witness, please hold on because the defense counsel for Nuon Chea is on his feet. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning to everyone. I object to this technique of questioning by the co-prosecutor. First, he announces he's going to speak about a document. Then he announces he's going to speak about the author of that document. Then there's about 5 questions relating to Tun Prasit. The way these questions are asked now, with the witness being asked to confirm whether or not this is indeed a document by Tun Prasit, I think the probative value by this time, now that the prosecution has already spent 5 minutes talking about Tun Prasit, will be nil. And I think the way the questions are formed in combination is a suggestive line of questioning, and I object to this.
Monsieur le Président, je...
Mr. President, I don't think I'm trying to suggest anything at all. I'd like to ask the witness if the data regarding the identity of this person does indeed correspond to the individual he knew in B1. It's as simple as that.
President, objection by the International Defense Council for Nuon Chea and his grounds for objections are correct. And the question is leading by nature. Because the questions indicates the names of the author, and then later the document be put to the witness for examination. So the prosecutor should refrain from framing the question in such a manner. So you may reframe your question.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, could you tell us who the author of this document is, and if you recognize this author, his writing and the identity data?
President, counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I recognize that the prosecution has rephrased its question, but the question is still substantively exactly the same. First, he feeds the witness with the information that, according to at least the prosecution, the author of this document is Tun Prasit, then asks the witness to confirm it. It's simply a leading question. I mean, what the prosecution could have done is to show the witness the document, ask him, do you recognize the author, do you recognize the handwriting of that we can find on this document. Then perhaps there could be follow-up questions as to Tun Prasit. But the prosecution should not be allowed to do it the other way around.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, In this courtroom, it is normal to ask certain questions to see if somebody is able to identify a document, and that is what I did. If the witness then goes on to admit that he recognizes Mr. Chun Prasit, I think it's fairly legitimate to ask him if he recognizes the document or not. Whether the defense wills this or not, the name on the first page of the biography is that of the individual.
President, the objection by the defense counsel is sustained, so prosecutor may move on to the next question, because yes, now you identify the author and the identity of the document before you put the question to the witness. So this question is leading. That's why there is an objection. So you may move on. Please move on to the next question. And if you do not have any further question that may lead the witness concerning this document, then you may consider using other documents. There are many other issues concerning this particular witness. You may now move on.
Mr. President, am I at least allowed to ask the witness if he knows the author of the document that has been put to him, or must I move on to another subject?
The President, since you put the leading question, so I think that other follow-up questions will be leading, because this document was already identified as the one belongs to Sung Si-kun, says the President, or Chun Prasit, the President is correct. So it appears that the witness had that idea already concerning that document. So even if you rephrase your question, it still remains leading. The co-prosecutor, you may proceed. Well, you can put a further question on substantive content of this document.
Thank you, Mr. President. In fact, I wanted to read an extract from the biography, which we believe is a biography by Chun Prasit. And as I said now, it's page 13 in the French version, page 19 in Khmer, and page 12 in the English. And I'd like to read out an extract and then ask the witness for his reaction to that extract. It begins with a title, To Socialist Revolution in Cambodia, on the page I gave you. I allowed Mr. President to put the extract on the screen.
President, you may proceed.
Voilà, je vais lire.
Very well. I'll read out the extract, which is going to be projected on the screens in a minute. It goes as follows. To socialist revolution in Cambodia. Before returning back to the country in late 1975, I did not notice that April the 17th, 1975 was the end of the People's Democratic Revolution. I thought that the revolution would be maintained for a certain amount of time. I did not realize that there had been major measures such as the evacuation of people and the abolition of the currency. Then I realized that these were very important acts to continue the socialist revolution and to establish socialism. Then I realized that these were very important acts that need to be done after an exhausting war. End of quote. What I want to know, Mr. Witness, is if what is written in this extract is the same as what you heard on the radio, or from certain members of the CPK with respect to the abolition of currency and the evacuation of Phnom Penh.
The President, witness, please hold on. Counsel Canavas, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors, and good morning to everyone in and around the courtroom. If we read the passage carefully, it talks about someone's state of mind. Now he's being asked to comment on a state of mind. He's asking for this gentleman to read the state of mind of another witness who gave this biography and to draw some sort of conclusion. We find it improper.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, this brings us into what the witness himself said, which was that the evacuation of Phnom Penh was not supposed to disperse enemy networks. I simply want to have the witness's reaction to what was stated in a biography. Obviously, in a biography, you're not going to say something that runs counter to the party line. Obviously, it's going to be in keeping with it.
The President, the objection and the grounds for objections by the International Defense Council for Mr. Ieng Sary is not valid and does not sustain. So the Chamber will direct the witness to respond to the last question posed by the prosecutor. Witness is now instructed to respond to the last question put by the prosecution, if you can still recall. Otherwise, I suggest the prosecution put the last question again. A response. Thank you, Mr. President. I would appreciate it if the prosecution could repeat the question.
Oui, dans
Yes, in the extract which we read out, there was reference to major measures, the evacuation of the population, the abolition of the currency, and the comment made by the author of the document was to say that these were extraordinary measures of which he hadn't fully realized the significance at the time regarding the class struggle, the continuation of socialism, building socialism in the country. Now, is what is said here in this document the same as what you may have heard on the radio or from the party itself about the cancellation of the currency and the evacuation of Phnom Penh?
To my knowledge, the evacuation, of all socialist country, only Cambodia evacuated people out of the city, and they abolished currency. And Mr. Chun Prasit share the same sentiment with me as well, that it was not the practice in other socialist country. Even in China, they evacuated people out of the city, but currency were put in circulation. So that's all I could answer to that question. And to my understanding, this was something extraordinary in Cambodia.
Merci.
Thank you. I'd now like to look at a different extract from the biography that you gave the investigating judge. It's document D504.3, and the interpreter corrects himself, D154/3. I'd like to look at 0035-1-2, in French 0029-07-87, and in English 00-81-67-42.
You may proceed. Court officer, please obtain the hard copy document from the prosecution and present it to the witness for his examination.
Monsieur le témoin.
Witness, you gave the French version to the co-investigating judges, such as was translated from English, and is the Khmer version the revolutionary biography that you wrote in the Times of Democratic Kampuchea, which you gave to the co-investigating judges in the French version?
The documents that I have in my hand is actually my biography.
Thank you. So on the page 3501, 3502 in Khmer, you said the following. You said, I was in full agreement with the party conceptually as well as in regard to abolition of currency and of markets, salaries, and the evacuation of the city populations, as well as in terms of cooperatives and the continuation of the socialist revolution and the construction of socialism, etc. Were all of these questions important questions? Issues that the party had decided on, and therefore that you could not contest, in any case, when writing a biography?
As a party's member who would serve the tasks assigned to that member, we had to implement the party's lines. For that reason, whatever decided by the party, whatever assigned by the party, we would adhere to it and accomplish it. And there was, if nothing was a necessity for the party or whatever it was, we would not bother asking all those questions. We would just adhere to the task and try to accomplish the tasks that were assigned by the party. The International Council for Noon Chia, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. No objection, but I cannot see the document on the screen, and I'm informed that other parties cannot see any documents either. So maybe there's a technical problem, and perhaps before we proceed, it should be resolved.
Mr. President, I will return to this biography a little later on, as well as to the circumstances in which it was written. So I will not put any questions regarding this biography right now, so we will have the time to sort out this technical problem. Now I wish to turn to another chapter, and I am perfectly aware of the fact that you are not here as an accused person, but I simply would like you to shed light on the events that happened between 1975 and 1979. I'd like to put to you a few questions regarding your relationship with Ieng Sary. Last Thursday, you said that you had met him probably at the beginning of 1957, and that he had accepted your request to become a clandestine member of the resistance movement. And you also mentioned that in October or November 1957, Ieng Sary wrote a letter to Khieu Samphan, and Khieu Samphan, after having received the letter, admitted you as a member of the circle of the Marxist-Leninist students in Paris. And then you also said that you became a full rights member of the CPK in 1971 during a ceremony that was presided over by Ieng Sary at his home. And as a full rights member of the CPK, did Ieng Sary ask you to do something special for the party within the FUNC?
Well, I was a member of the FUNC in Beijing in 1970 through 73 and mid-74. Ieng Sary appointed me as a representative of the AKI in Beijing.
Thank you. And then a little later on, and let's revisit the trip you did to Africa and Europe with Ieng Sary and Khieu Samphan in April 1974. And who told you that you would soon be returning to Cambodia? I believe that you were told this in the airplane.
At that time, it was Ieng Sary.
Thank you. And in May 1974, when you accompanied Ieng Sary and Khieu Samphan on an official visit to Hanoi and to a liberated zone in Laos, who then ordered you to stay in Hanoi to work for the Voice of the Funk with Ieng Tirit?
It was the same. That was Mr. Ieng Sary.
And last Thursday, you spoke about a stay at B20 for about a month. After that, where did you work? For which ministry?
At that time, the ministry was not yet formed. I was working with Mr. Ieng Sary, who was my superior.
And then, did you join the Ministry of Foreign Affairs later? And who ran this ministry?
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs was led by Mr. Ieng Sary in his capacity as the Deputy Prime Minister in charge of Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Did you work at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs until January 1979?
Yes, I worked there until January 1979.
So we will revisit the different duties you were entrusted with at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But a question beyond this. After 1979, did you continue working with Mr. Ieng Sary, in particular within the DNUM?
Mr. President, do I have to respond to this question because it's beyond the scope of the chamber? The National Council for Ieng Sary, you may proceed. And Madam, good morning, Mr. President, Your Honors. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Witness. The question by the prosecution is far beyond the temporal jurisdiction of the ECCC, and it's beyond 1979, and it is out of the scope of this trial, and we like to object to that question.
I'm aware, President, that we are beyond 1979, but this is simply to understand whether the witness continued to have contact with Ieng Sary after 1979. But I will not pursue this further.
President, the objection and ground by the National Council for Ieng Sary is not sustained. The Chamber wants to hear the response to the question last asked by the prosecutor. Witness, please respond to the last question. Witness. Prosecutor, could you please repeat your last question? President. Prosecutor, please repeat your last question as he may not recall exactly what you asked.
Yes, I simply wanted to know whether after 1979 you continue working with Ieng Sary, in particular within the DNUM movement, the Democratic National Union movement.
Mr. President, I'd like the prosecutor to clarify, as there was a new historical context. I could both say that I continued working with Ieng Sary or that I started working with somebody else. I'd like to know the exact date of the time period. Could you please try to limit or specify the time period in your question?
Yes, witness. Let's take a leap in time. We're going to speak about the date when the DNUM was created, and we will continue on into Ieng Sary's rendition in Phnom Penh. So that is to say until 1996.
After 1979, actually, what I want you to clarify is that Ieng Sary actually gave me instructions, but he did not have the authority to decide on the assignments that were tasked to me. The decisions were made at the standing committee level and in particular by Pol Pot. So my assignments were not done by Ieng Sary. It was ordered by Pol Pot. So Pol Pot first has to make the decisions, then the ministers in charge would issue such orders or relate such orders or instructions to the subordinates. That's how the command hierarchy works.
I'm not sure you answered my question, witness. I was speaking about a period after 1979. I was speaking about the 1980s and 1990s. But, however, let me return to May 1975 and to the period that extended to January 1979. And you said that you worked for Ieng Sary during that period. Were you a close collaborator of Ieng Sary during that period?
Mr. President, I don't really understand the word collaborator. What does it mean by that? I'd like the prosecutor to clarify that term further.
Yes, we will return to the different duties you held within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. As an employee at B1, were you close to Yang Sari? Close in professional terms.
Mr. President, I'd like the prosecutor to clarify the word closely. Frankly speaking, I don't want to speak too much, but it seems that when a question put to me by the international prosecutor, it doesn't seem that they are not familiar with the situations in Cambodia, neither the movement of that regime at the time. And what you refer to by the term closely, could you please specify? Because as a party's member, we are not closely related as individuals. We are closely to the party's lines. We closely worked with those who were assigned a similar task. It doesn't mean that I hate to just to work based on whatever he assigned. I hate to adhere to the tasks that were assigned to me and not by him personally. And of course, the subordinate hates to adhere to the instructions from the superior. The minority hates to listen to the majority. That were just some of the principles that we had to adhere to. But it seems foreigners working in Cambodia do not understand the context of the country. And probably they have to understand the right movement or the movement of the Khmer Rouge first. I don't want to wander into these things, but it is very difficult for me to define the term, quote, closely, unquote. If you talk about closely related, of course, I knew him since I was young. I knew his wife as well. But it does not mean that I just blindly followed him in terms of whatever he assigned to me. In general, it's the same thing when it comes to Mr. Khieu Sampon. I'd like to tell you we are the communists, and we are the members of the Leninist, Marxist-Leninist circle in France. That movement was solid, was very strong, despite some contradictions. We understood things differently. We love each other as brothers and sisters. So, I feel the pain when the Khmer Rouge leader fought amongst themselves. And of course, I felt the pain when I saw the brothers who were sitting on the other side. President, Mr. Witness, you have been reminded on a number of occasions that try to limit your response to the question or the content of the questions put to you, and try not to make unnecessary comments, which would be a waste of your time and energy, so that we can conclude the assigned scheduled to hear your testimony. Please try not to make comments which would affect other parties who will later put questions to you. Just respond based on your knowledge. The prosecution, and you may continue with your questioning.
Thank you. Witness, I was simply basing myself on the terms that appear in your statement and that were translated into French. And in this regard, I wish to read an excerpt from your statement, that is E3/42. which is also referred to as D-167. This is a statement you made on 6 May 2009, and I wish to give a copy to the witness of the document and to read an excerpt which in Khmer is at pages 0032, 72, 09 to 010. In French, it is on page 8. And in English, the ERN is 0032, 72, 19. And with your leave, may we please display a part of this answer on the screen.
You may proceed. Court officer, could you bring the hard copy of the document for the witness examination?
Donc, je ne vais pas tout lire, mais je vais lire.
I'm not going to read everything, but I'm just going to read the answer you provided to the following question. And the answer is, Ieng Sary did not inform me personally. He said this during a meeting at the Department of General Politics, if I remember correctly, which his closest collaborators attended. That is to say, Chun Prasit, Ket Chun, Toch Kam Dun, Sakun, Chanyuran, Pe Bunret, and myself, as well as Sose, who was a secretary of the party cell. Chun Prasit and Ket Chun were accused of being CIA agents, and the security committee wished to arrest them. Ieng Sary explained that the ministry could not operate without them, and you must understand that he had complete trust in them. All of these people, like me, were part of the Marxist-Leninist group of Khmer students in Paris, of which Ieng Sary was the founder, with Keng Van Sak and Rat Som Un. So, in this segment, close collaborators and trust are mentioned. So, Ieng Sary, did he trust you in his work?
It is difficult for me to respond. During the class struggles and the struggle internally, the word trust was difficult to define. We judge a matter based on the reflection of the party's line. I don't want to say that we should go back and ask him. That's not appropriate. However, there was a limit to the word trust. Of course, there was not 100% trust. It doesn't exist that way. Let's say it's 51%. That's just the percentage I could give. This is just for the sake of the understanding. The word trust within the internal party was not really a matter. Everything was an evolution, was a resistance. For example, at one point in time, we trusted our leaders, but at another time, the trust could change according to the situation, and that is my response.
Thank you. I wish now to return to the different duties you had within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Can you tell us quickly what were the different duties that were entrusted to you successively within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs between 1975 and 1979, and then we will return to some of these duties later.
I'd like to say that Mr. Ieng Sary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs assigned to the three of us, that is Kit Chon and another friend of mine who was a member of the Marxist-Leninist Circle, Tun Saren, and myself to organize the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which was at the time known as Pteh Kaung, which is the current Council of Ministers. And later on, also in 1975, I was in charge of the Southeast Asia and the Europe sections. And later on, from June 1977, I was the Director of Information and Propaganda of the MFA and a spokesperson for the ministry until 1979.
Were you also the Deputy Director of Protocol and of Politics?
Yes, I forget. I was the Deputy Director of a Protocol section and a member of the Protocol section of the MFA. And the MFA, and for that section, was charged by Ieng Sary himself.
Merci.
Thank you. Who was the head of protocol when you were the deputy?
It was Madame Sosai, the wife of Pach Bonret. Pach Bonret was the representative of Democratic Cambodia through the ESCAP in the Asia Pacific.
Est-ce que vous avez...
Were you also responsible for the Cambodia Press Agency after 1975? There was reference to this during your stay in Peking, but after May 75, were you in charge of the agency in its entirety?
In Cambodia, Pol Pot assigned me to be the director of the information agency. It was Cambodia Information or Press Agency. AKP. President, thank you. The time is now appropriate for an adjournment. The court will adjourn until 10 to 11. Court officer is instructed to facilitate the place for the witness and his duty counsel and have them back before us by 10 to 11. The court is now adjourned.